we're going to review for history. We're going to review the Northeast and the Southeast region, and then we're going to also do the Midwest without the names. All right.
Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware.
And just in case you don't know, this is the next one we're going to, right here, which is?
Virginia.
No,
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Virginia.
North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, Arkansas, Florida.
All right, now let's see how you do on the Midwest states. All right? All right.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan.
That was a little weak. Let's try it again.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan.
All right, some of you, I'm not sure you're actually saying the right thing, so listen carefully. North Dakota, South Dakota,
Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri,
Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Michigan. All right, page 197. We're going to start learning about a man named Noah Webster today. Colonial time. Noah, you must stop reading now. It's time for bed. In the morning, you have chores to do. Yes, Pa. With a sigh, 12-year-old Noah closed the almanac. How he loved to read. If only there were more books, he thought. Like most homes in the 13 American colonies in 1771, the Webster home had very few books. Even in the one-room schoolhouse, there were usually only 3 books. One Bible for all the older children, on the page, to read. One primer, and it looks like primer, but it's pronounced primer in this case. One primer for all the younger children, and one speller for the whole class. And you guys understand that it's one book that they all had to share? So the one person would read, and then they'd pass it to the other person, and they would read, and then they'd pass it to the next person, and they would read. They had to share the whole thing. One of the first lessons a colonial school child learned was how to share. Noah, along with most colonial children, could not go to school as often as he would have liked. There was always work to be done. Today, most farmers use machines to help them get their work done. But in the 1700s, the corn, wheat, and oats had to be planted and gathered by hand. Colonial farmers tried to make everything their families needed. If Noah's father wanted a new farm wagon, he and his sons built it. The family grew their own food for themselves and their animals. There was much work to be done. Even the children's help was needed. There was little time for school or play. 2,500 books. I'm still on that page over there, which proves to me you're not following along as I read. Make sure you're following along as I read. Yes, ma'am?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see where it says 2,500 books?
I was on the wrong page. Yes. Now I see it.
Okay, well that's very problematic that I read all that and you never knew you were on the wrong page because you weren't following along with me. 2,500 books. Noah had wonderful parents. They were honest, hard-working people who loved each of their children. They realized that Noah wanted to read and study. More than anything, Noah wanted to go to Yale College. Top of the next page. I heard that there are 2,500 books in the library at Yale College. Just think of all I could learn, Noah told his father. Son, it would cost me more money than I have to send you to college, and it will make more work for the whole family. I may even have to sell the farm to pay for your college education. Noah's father paused. But if you want to go, I will send you. When Noah was almost 16 years old, he left for college. He promised himself that he would work hard. He knew that his parents were making a big sacrifice for him, and he wanted them to be proud of his work. All right, before we read the next section, I want to go back and do the important words and the important names. So the first important word is primer. Okay? There is a word spelled exactly the same way that's pronounced primer, but this one is primer. And what is primer? A textbook for young children. Think about, this is called a raised hand. If you have a question, you do this, and I call on you, okay? All right. You have right in front of you a history textbook. That's a textbook. But this is for young children, so think about when you were in kindergarten and your books were like ba, 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 ba. Okay, so teaching you the beginnings of how to read. All right? Then let's read the important names. Noah Webster, the writer of the first American textbook and the first American dictionary. Blue-backed speller, the first American textbook for children. The American Dictionary of the English Language, the first American dictionary. Okay, top of the next page. No, War for Independence, that's where we are. Starting where it says War for Independence. The 4 years that Noah went to college were troubled ones for the American colonies. The American War for Independence was being fought. Noah and all his classmates were excited to hear that George Washington had been chosen to lead the American Army. How the students cheered when they heard the Declaration of Independence read for the first time. There was so much excitement that it was hard to study. Becoming a teacher. Noah's parents were proud when he graduated from college, but it was hard for him to find a job. The war had made many people poor. Noah's father had to sell his farm. At last, Noah Webster decided, I will become a teacher. Schools still had too few books. Noah Webster shook his head and watched the older children pass the one copy of the Bible, turn page, from one person to the next. The small children had to wait their turn to study from the primer. How much more I could teach them if each one had his own book, he thought. The need for American textbook. With the war ending, fathers would be coming home from the army. Some would send their children to school. Americans lived in a free country now, but their children were still reading about kings and queens and English school books. If America is to stay a free country, her children need to know how to read. They need to read what Americans write, not what Englishmen write. What these children need is an American textbook. Noah Webster exclaimed, so he began to write. The Blue-Backed Speller. Noah Webster called his first book the American Spelling Book. So what was the name of his first book?
The American Spelling Book.
Since it had a blue cloth cover, it became known as the Blue-Backed Speller. So he didn't name it that, people just called it that because of its blue cover. It began with simple blends, ba, be, bid, ba, bu. Right? And by the way, that is a picture showing the American Spelling Book. Like what would have been the front page, the very first page of it. So you can see where it says the American Spelling Book up at the top. As the student began to read words, Mr. Webster wrote truths that would help the children become a good American. So this is what he wrote. Read with me. Every child in America should be acquainted with his home country. He should read books that furnish him with ideas that will be useful to him in life and practice. As soon as he opens his lips, he should rehearse the history of his own country. Mr. Webster filled the speller with other good things to read. He listed the names of different countries, what the people of each country were called, and the main city in each country. Then he listed the states, main towns, and people of America. So these are some of the things that you would have seen in the American Spelling Book. So let's read. The country, England, the people, English, and the main city, London. Next country, Scotland, the people were Scots, main city?
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh, very good. The next country?
Ireland.
The people are?
Irish.
And our main city?
Dublin.
Dublin, very good. Next country?
Italy.
Italy. The people are?
Italians.
And the main city?
Rome.
Right, and then he also listed states. Now, all the states that we have today would not have been on here because all of them were not states at this time yet. Remember, the 13 original colonies became states, but we've added more and more states as time went on. But one of the states would have been
New
Hampshire, and the main town of it would be Portsmouth. Portsmouth, it's not Portsmouth, it's Portsmouth. Then the next state they list is Massachusetts, and one of the main towns is
Boston.
and the people from Boston are called
Bostonians.
Then one of the states is
Maryland.
and main towns for Maryland are
Baltimore and
Annapolis, and people from Maryland are called
Marylanders.
All right, turn the page. Children who opened the Blueback Speller for the first time were delighted. They had never had a chance to read the names of countries and cities before. For the first time, many children said, "Reading is fun." Millions of copies of the Blueback Speller were sold. Noah Webster did not stop with just one textbook. He wrote others too. He wrote about his country, the United States of America. He was proud to be an American. He wanted others to be just as proud. There is none righteous. Noah Webster married a woman named Rebecca Greenleaf, a relative of John Greenleaf Whittier, an American author you will learn about in the next chapter. As the years passed, they had 8 children, 6 girls and 2 boys. When he was 50 years old, Mr. Webster began to realize that he was trusting in all the good things he had done to get him to heaven. After all, he wrote good books to help children, and he loved his country. But Mr. Webster began to study the Bible. He read verses like Romans 3:10. There is none righteous, no, not one. After studying the Bible, he realized that he must ask God to forgive him of his sins. He must ask Jesus to be his Savior. This he gladly did. The next morning, his wife and children gathered around him. Mr. Webster spoke to them from his heart. From now on, we must gather together and read the Bible every day. We must also have family prayer, he told them. His children noticed a change in their father. They knew he believed what he read to them from the Bible. Not long afterward, 3 of his daughters also accepted the Savior. All right, and that is where we'll stop today. And we'll continue learning about Noah Webster